VPC Accessible Services question. Welcome. Today we're diving into a practical VPC service control scenario that focuses on restricting access to specific Google Cloud services from a VPC network. The scenario involves a company with a service perimeter containing production and data projects. The production project has a VPC network and needs to access only cloud storage from the data project, but currently has access to multiple services. The goal is to implement least privilege access with minimal administrative overhead. This is a classic use case for VPC accessible services, which allows you to control which Google Cloud APIs can be accessed from within a VPC network. We'll explore all four options and understand why VPC accessible services is the optimal solution for this specific requirement. Understanding the scenario. Let's break down what we're dealing with here. We have a service perimeter that includes both production and data projects. This means both projects are within the same security boundary and can normally access each other's resources freely. The production project hosts a VPC network, which is where applications and workloads run. Currently, resources in this VPC can access multiple Google Cloud services in the data project, including Cloud Storage, BigQuery, Cloud SQL, and others. However, the security team wants to implement a least privilege model where the production VPC can only access cloud storage in the data project. They want to block access to all other services like BigQuery, Cloud SQL, etc. The challenge is implementing this restriction efficiently without creating complex firewall rules or restructuring the entire architecture. Current versus desired state. In the current state, the production VPC has broad access to multiple services in the data project. This violates the principle of least privilege and creates unnecessary security exposure. The desired state is much more restrictive. The production VPC should only be able to access cloud storage APIs in the data project, while all other service access is blocked. This is exactly what VPC Accessible Services is designed to solve. It allows you to create an allow list of Google Cloud APIs that can be accessed from within a VPC network, blocking everything else by default. The beauty of this approach is that it operates at the API level, so you don't need to worry about IP addresses, ports, or complex network routing rules. What is VPC Accessible Services? VPC Accessible Services is a feature of VPC service controls that allows you to specify which Google Cloud APIs can be accessed from within a VPC network that's inside a service perimeter. When you enable VPC Accessible Services and specify an allowed list, any attempts to access Google Cloud APIs not on that list will be blocked, even if the target resources are within the same service perimeter. This provides fine-grained control over API access patterns from VPC networks. It's particularly useful for implementing zero-trust networking principles where you want to explicitly allow only the minimum necessary access. The configuration is straightforward. You enable the feature and provide a list of Google Cloud Service APIs that should be accessible. Everything else gets blocked automatically. Analyzing each option. Let's examine why the other options don't work for this scenario. Option A suggests using firewall rules to restrict egress traffic to cloud storage. While this might seem logical, Google Cloud API access doesn't work through traditional network firewall rules. APIs are accessed through Google's private network infrastructure, not through regular IP-based traffic that firewalls can intercept. Option B proposes using restricted VIP. This is a networking feature that routes Google Cloud API traffic through a specific IP range, but it doesn't provide the granular service level restrictions we need. It's more about routing than access control. Option D suggests creating a new service perimeter just for the production project. This would actually make the problem worse by isolating production from the data project entirely, requiring additional bridges and complexity. Why option C is correct? Option C, enabling VPC accessible services and adding cloud storage as an allowed service, is the perfect solution for this scenario. First, it directly addresses the requirement to restrict access to only cloud storage. By creating an allow list with only cloud storage, All other service access gets blocked automatically. Second, it requires minimal administrative overhead. You just enable the feature and specify the allowed services. No complex rule management or architecture changes needed. Third, it operates at the right level, the API level rather than the network level. This makes it more precise and reliable than trying to use traditional firewall rules for API access control. Finally, it maintains the existing service perimeter structure while adding the necessary restrictions, which is exactly what the scenario calls for. How VPC Accessible Services works. Let me explain the technical mechanism behind VPC Accessible Services. When you enable this feature, VPC Service Controls intercepts all Google Cloud API calls originating from the specified VPC network. For each API call, the system checks whether the target service is on the allowed list. If it is, the call proceeds normally. If it's not on the list, the call is blocked and an access denied error is returned to the client. This happens transparently to applications. They don't need to be modified or reconfigured. From their perspective, they simply lose access to certain APIs, which is exactly the behavior we want. The enforcement happens at Google's edge, so it's highly reliable and performant. There's no additional latency or infrastructure required on your end. Implementation steps. The implementation is straightforward and involves just a few gcloud commands. We'll modify the existing service perimeter to enable VPC accessible services and specify cloud storage as the only allowed service. The key parameter is the VPC accessible services list, where we specify storage.googleapps.com as the only allowed API. This will block access to all other Google Cloud services from the production VPC. Notice that we're updating the existing service perimeter rather than creating a new one. This maintains the current architecture while adding the necessary restrictions. After applying this configuration, any applications in the production VPC will only be able to access cloud storage APIs in the data project. Attempts to access BigQuery, Cloud SQL, or other services will be blocked. Verification and monitoring. After implementing services accessible via VPC, it is important to verify that the restrictions are working as expected and monitor for any issues. The first verification step is to test that cloud storage access still works. Applications should be able to read from and write to cloud storage buckets in the data project without any issues. The second step is to verify that other services are indeed blocked. You can test this by trying to access BigQuery or Cloud SQL from the production VPC. These attempts should fail with access denied errors. For ongoing monitoring, VPC Service Controls generates detailed logs of all blocked access attempts. You can use these logs to ensure the policy is working correctly and to identify any legitimate access that might need to be added to the allowed list. Benefits and best practices. VPC Accessible Services provide several key benefits for this type of use case. It implements least privilege access automatically, reduces the attack surface by blocking unnecessary API access, and provides centralized control over service access patterns. From a best practices perspective, start with a minimal allowed list and add services only as needed. Monitor the access logs to understand actual usage patterns and identify any blocked access that might be legitimate. Document your VPC Accessible Services configuration as part of your security architecture. This helps other teams understand what access is available and why certain restrictions are in place. Finally, consider using VPC Accessible Services as part of a broader Zero Trust security strategy where you explicitly allow only the minimum necessary access rather than relying on perimeter-based security alone. Summary and key takeaways. Let's wrap up with the key points from this analysis. The scenario required restricting production VPC access to only cloud storage in the data project with minimal administrative overhead. VPC's accessible services are the ideal solution because it provides granular, API-level access control that operates transparently to applications. It requires minimal configuration and maintenance while providing robust security controls. The correct answer is option C. Enable VPC's accessible services and add the cloud storage as an allowed service. This directly implements the required restrictions without architectural changes or complex route management. Understanding VPC's accessible services are crucial for implementing least privilege access in Google Cloud environments. It's a powerful tool for controlling API access patterns and reducing security exposure in multi-project architectures. Thank you for following along with this analysis. VPC's accessible services are a key component of a comprehensive cloud security strategy.